We have to repeat the simple truth over and over. Why? Because the Democrats are in an all-out assault on the truth. They're trying to obscure and distract. Did the Democrats cause this shutdown? Is because if the Republicans were responsible for this shutdown, that would lead the news in every mainstream media outlet every single night. It would be top fold of every newspaper on the front page every single day. They can't even articulate what they want. You know why? Because this was never about a solution on healthcare or anything else. This was about a spectacle.
After a week of false criticism and nonstop blame from Democrats, Speaker Mike Johnson just fired back in the most brutal way possible, turning their lies into a political fireball that burned through Washington's spin. They tried to blame him for the shutdown, leak fake GOP chaos stories, and twist the truth, but Johnson flipped the script, called out every lie, and made it clear. This shutdown circus belongs to the Democrats, not the Republicans.
Criticism on the call yesterday saying that this shutdown strategy is old and Republicans need to have new tack.
Democrats were already feeding headlines that Speaker Mike Johnson had lost control of his own party. But behind the noise, there was no chaos, just calculation. So, at the press briefing, reporters came ready to pounce, quoting Representative Beth Van Deen and hinting that Republicans were clashing behind closed doors.
I make a pleading at the beginning of every call that you wouldn't do that and wouldn't characterize it, but whoever the leak is, whatever. Beth Van Deen was quoted. Beth is a dear friend. We've had lots of conversations about this. She was not complaining. It was not dissonance, Chad. She was pointing out that we have a lot of important work to do before the end of the year, and it was a very pleasant, constructive comment about strategy.
It was supposed to be the gotcha moment. Instead, Johnson turned it into a live autopsy of media spin. He dismantled the entire story and clarified that Van Deen's comment wasn't criticism at all. It was a constructive point about timing and strategy. In other words, the supposed feud didn't even exist.
If you called each individual House Republican right now, we're almost 100%, probably 99.8%, okay, of every House Republican understands exactly why we're in the situation we're in. Are we all anxious to get back to work here for regular legislative session? Absolutely.
Then he dropped the line that froze the room. If you called every House Republican right now, 99.8% of them would understand exactly why we're in this situation. That one sentence hit harder than any rant could. It exposed how fake the so-called GOP split really was. Johnson wasn't just defending his team, he was exposing a system built on manipulation. For years, Democrats have relied on media echo chambers to exaggerate Republican disagreements and manufacture disunity. But this time, the illusion cracked.
You all have heard me say from the podium a few times, we're not pursuing a political strategy here. We're not. We're just simply trying to get the government open, and that's why the nonpartisan Clean CR was the obvious vehicle to do that.
What made it powerful was precision. Johnson didn't yell, didn't rant, he flipped the lens. He made the media's obsession with leaks look childish and desperate. And that's where the real message landed. The chaos Democrats keep talking about isn't inside the GOP, it's inside the narrative factory they've been running for years. The moment the cameras turned back on, Johnson stopped playing defense. He went straight for the jugular, the shutdown itself. For days, Democrats had blamed Republicans for breaking Washington. Johnson turned that talking point into ash. He laid it out plain. Republicans already passed a clean, nonpartisan continuing resolution, a bill designed to keep the government open with no political riders, no poison pills, just paychecks and services.
And so we're not making political calculations here.
Then he dropped the punch. It was Democrats who voted no. They killed the very deal they demanded. Johnson called it what it was, a manufactured crisis for cable news drama. We're not pursuing a political strategy here, he said. We're just trying to get the government open. That line landed like a gavel. It stripped away the theater and exposed what this shutdown really is, a choice, not an accident.
We have to repeat the simple truth over and over. Why? Because the Democrats are in an all-out assault on the truth. They're trying to obscure and distract, and you see all the different shiny objects they're trying to make everyone look at every day.
And he didn't stop there. Johnson accused Democrats of running an all-out assault on the truth, using shiny distractions to hide their own failure. He told reporters the proof was right in front of them. If Republicans had caused this shutdown, every network would be screaming it from the top of the hour. Instead, silence. No wall-to-wall coverage, no outrage panels. Because when the facts don't fit the script, the media changes the story.
Did the Democrats cause this shutdown? Is because if the Republicans were responsible for this shutdown, that would lead the news in every mainstream media outlet every single night.
That's the part the establishment doesn't want to admit. The shutdown wasn't born from incompetence, it was engineered for optics. Democrats wanted chaos they could weaponize, and the media delivered it on cue. But Johnson called their bluff. He exposed the stunt, the spin, and the hypocrisy, and in doing so, turned their favorite weapon right back on them. Once Johnson pinned the blame where it belonged, he turned his sights on the other half of the problem, the media. He said out loud what every voter already suspects. If Republicans had caused this shutdown, it would be leading every newscast in America. But they didn't, and suddenly the same networks went quiet. That silence, he said, is proof of bias. Proof that the press protects Democrats even when the facts collapse.
I mean, look, everybody knows the facts. The American people are not stupid. And we're in here every day appealing to their common sense and relaying the facts, and thankfully those facts are saturating. Yeah.
Johnson dissected the system. He explained that Democrats aren't just fighting Republicans, they're fighting truth itself, using friendly outlets to flood the airwaves with distractions. Every breaking update about GOP disunity? It's a smokescreen to hide who actually pulled the plug on government funding. That's why, he argued, Republicans have to repeat the same message every day. Not because they lack ideas, but because the truth gets buried under noise.
That the date of November 21 was decided upon by the experts in the field, the appropriators themselves, in a bipartisan agreement.
By this point, Johnson had dismantled the blame game, but then he went deeper, showing how the shutdown chaos wasn't an accident. It was a clock the Democrats were running down on purpose. He reminded reporters that the deadline, November 21st, wasn't picked out of thin air. It was a bipartisan decision. Both Republicans and Democrats on the Appropriations Committee agreed that 7 extra weeks were needed to finish funding bills. Democrats even begged for a clean continuing resolution free of Republican riders. Johnson said fine, they got it.
Republicans and Democrats on the Appropriations Committee came together and agreed on that appropriate date, but it was calculated to allow enough time to finish the job. I think all of them, when they decided upon that date, were in good faith, and they said, and the Democrats said to us, please make it clean, please don't add Republican priorities, because then we can get the job done. We did exactly that.
And then, they stalled anyway. He accused them of eating up the clock with political grandstanding, using hearings, press hits, and procedural delays to make the crisis drag out long enough to weaponize it. The irony couldn't have been louder. The very people who demanded a clean bill turned around and blocked it, then blamed the other side for the mess.
We have been in good faith every single day on this, and they are eating up the clock. So we're getting closer to November. It is going to be more and more difficult with each passing hour to get all the appropriations done on time. We acknowledge that, but we have to decide this on a day-by-day basis.
Johnson framed it like a hostage situation. Every day the government stayed closed, Democrats gained one more news cycle to attack Republicans. He called it what it was, political nonsense, pure and simple. And he wasn't wrong. Washington insiders knew the math. The longer the shutdown lasted, the harder it would be to pass the 12 appropriations bills before the deadline. The Democrats didn't want progress. They wanted pressure. For Johnson, it was about trust. He pointed out that Republicans had kept their word, operating in good faith while Democrats turned a bipartisan schedule into a partisan weapon.
Apparently seeking $230 million from the Department of Justice.
Receives it, he was going to consider giving it to charity. I mean, he doesn't need those proceeds, but I mean, it was built between 1792 and 1800, right? The British burned it down practically in 1814, and then they rebuilt it in the early 1820s, and ever since, like, we've had many presidents.
Even when reporters tried to corner Johnson with side issues, he turned every question into a power move. Then came the DOJ story. The claim that Trump wanted $230 million from the Department of Justice. Johnson didn't flinch. He said Trump didn't need the money and would likely donate it to charity, then added the line that landed, "They attack him for everything he does."
By the way, hey, Democrats, if you win the White House back, you get to use it too. This is for the American people, and he's using private funds to do it. How in the world could they oppose that? The only logical reason is because they have Trump derangement syndrome, and that's what explains a lot of it.
Finally, the White House ballroom question, another trap. Johnson flipped it instantly. He listed past presidents who remodeled the White House: Roosevelt's West Wing, Truman's bowling alley, Obama's basketball court, and said Trump's ballroom was no different, except it was privately funded. His closer hit hard. Democrats oppose it for one reason: Trump derangement syndrome. Each answer turned an ambush into ammunition. Johnson didn't just defend Trump, he exposed how Democrats and the press turn every headline into an anti-Trump stunt.
They want to oppose the president, and Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are scared that they're going to lose their jobs.
Johnson tore into that theater. He said Schumer and Jeffries aren't acting from principle, they're acting out of fear. Fear of losing control, fear of the far-left base that demands conflict instead of compromise. That's why every vote turns into a photo op and every press conference turns into a campaign ad. They don't want solutions, they want scenes that keep their audience angry.
I wish that you guys would chase them down and call them up and ask them what it is they're demanding. This madness in the counterproposal, what I told you about, is the offer still on the table? They can't even articulate what they want. You know why? Because this was never about a solution on healthcare or anything else. This was about a spectacle.
His tone sharpened. He said Democrats have turned Congress into a content studio. They sell outrage the way influencers sell merch. They invent villains, script Republican extremism, and hope the noise drowns out how little they've actually done for working Americans. But this time, Johnson flipped the camera back on them. The spectacle they built to destroy him ended up exposing them.